So in negotiation, there's a thing called the flinch. And the flinch is when you act negatively toward an offer. In other words, you offer me 50 cents for this book, and I say, 50 cents? What are you, crazy? That's a flinch. And it usually results in somebody coming up and offering you more, maybe 1 out of 3 times. So it's a good technique. Chicago has a dearth of people who are the backbone of entertainment. We got tremendous talent, but the people who are helping the talent, not as many. Chicagoans got to learn how to negotiate. That's key. And when you hear, the higher authority pitch, or the good guy, bad guy, or somebody throws you what they call a hot potato, their problem that they want you to solve, you got to know how to deal with it. Babies negotiate with kisses, husband and wives. It's something we do every day. We don't always realize that we're doing it. And sometimes kids who grow up, in a big city, poor, learned about necessity how to negotiate. I actually was born in Brooklyn, and my parents died when I was 2. So my aunt and uncle, who had moved to Rockford, Illinois, adopted me. They gave me a choice, doctor or lawyer. I didn't like blood, so I decided to become a lawyer. Body language can be very revealing. You can learn a lot about people by watching their reaction to things. Then there's hidden meaning of words. Somebody says to you, oh, by the way, or incidentally, they're setting you up for a very, very important announcement by making you feel as if this is something they just thought of off the top of their head. I went to a regular law firm, and we were doing collection work and this and that, trying to get people to pay their bills. It was not fun. I would say it was probably in '72. I got a call from 2 members of the Muddy Waters band. They had been in an accident. Muddy had been kind of crippled, and the driver killed. Could we handle it? Well, I found out it was a substandard insurance company, and I found out they were due to go bankrupt soon, which is the technique that they used in those days. I knew if I didn't grab something, there would be nothing to grab. So I quickly settled, and from Muddy I met Willie Dixon, we met Albert King, and we met this one and that one. Throughout the years, I think we've probably represented more blues and gospel artists than any lawyer ever has. Most of them are discarded. They're no longer, people pay attention to them. So a lot of these people live in poverty. And I think to myself, these are the people that made our lives worth living. These are the people that we would actually take the time and go through all sorts of aggravation to watch them perform because they were so unusual and talented. They made us smile, they made us laugh. And here they are, nothing. Blues, after all, covered, 3 to 5% of the marketplace? I once had a dinner with Phil Chess, who I think I had sued several times. And I said, Phil, how can you look in the mirror after all the stuff you've done? And he said, Jay, I wasn't any different than anybody else. That's just the way the business was in those days. When you're negotiating, you have to constantly be gathering information, constantly finding out about your opponent, who he is. When I did a negotiation with Ahmet Ertegun, he owned Atlantic Records, I read his book. I found a lot about Ahmet, and I found out that he liked this sport, perhaps, so I talked about that sport, I read up on it, etc., because I found that people like themselves more than they like you. So if you want them to like you, be like them. And it works. Incidentally, that's a quote from Ken Nordine, who's one of my favorite guys. A little more than halfway through my career, I'm in my office just like I am now, and the phone rings, and the voice on the phone says, This is James Brown. He said, you Mr. Ross? You know. And I said, all right, who is it? Who's playing the game? And he said, no, it's really James Brown, you know, and it was. So at my own expense, I flew out to Augusta. He was finishing up his work release program where he had been, you know, typical of the rural South, arrested for eluding police, which was a $50 fine in Chicago. He got 3 years in South Carolina. And he was just getting out on work release. And he had me do his pay-per-view. I got him the largest advance in the history of music. And I got him ownership of the pay-per-view after 10 years.
Who'd ever thought the blues would wind up there?
There's two kinds of negotiation. One is intimidation, which doesn't prolong, you know, long relationships normally. And the other is win-win negotiation, where you ask questions and you try to find out what is the other person really want. And if you can find out what they want, you can try to figure out, you know, what to do. The music business is a jealous mistress. It's changing all the time. And, you know, if you don't keep up with streaming and all this kind of stuff, you're lost. You know, we got about 700 clients nationally known, and, you know, they come to Chicago. Whether it was Cuba Gooding Sr. with his main ingredient or Maurice Williams in North Carolina. These were heroes of mine, and I've always had the idea that, you know, these people deserve more than they get. We just started collecting money for the heirs of Mom's Mabley after she's been dead like 20 years. It's sad, but, you know, somebody's got to do it, and I have tried to do it. Not a lot of competition because I'm not competing with multimillionaires. I'm competing to get, you know, the crumbs. But people could live off the crumbs. Right now they're getting nothing. I'm an autograph collector. It's a little bit closer than just a picture because the person was actually there and touched it. The Post-it notes are so they won't fade in the light. Here are people who made significant use of their lives, you know, gives you kind of something to shoot for. People are sometimes real sophisticated when it comes to performing, but somewhat naive in other things because they devote their lives to their performances. The attitude is grab the money and run, which is not always the best way to negotiate. In the old house music days, there were house music artists that would sell the same song to all 3 major labels on the same day, you know, and then let them fight it out.
Thank you for calling the young fella.
The key for anybody in this business is to do their due diligence. Study up on people. If these guys say, you know, we're the biggest, we really are good, fine. Would you mind letting me connect with one of your people that are on your label now, and so I can talk to them and see what they have to say? You'd be shocked how candid people can be.
For a very reasonable fee, I'll rap for you. I'll set you free. I'm your main man in the city. So if you're busted, well, I know it's a pity. You just come to me for your mouthpiece, and from that moment, your trouble will cease.
I wrote the lyrics, and one of my clients did the music. I changed Mr. T's name from Larry Tiro to Mr. T. I sued Irving Azoff, so I'm on his enemies list. And I did the ultimate sin, I won. My next door neighbor was Studs Terkel. Don't smoke pot with your clients. The painting of 3 men on a bench, just their feet, that kind of relaxes me when I look at that. It's cheaper than a shrink. You just can't call yourself an entertainment lawyer and be one.